So again, we're at Dime Analytics, which is part of the development impact evaluations team here in the World Bank's DEC unit, so development economics. It's a team of researchers, primarily, so we have about 25 economists and their research teams, so 40-ish research assistants at any given time, 60-ish people in the field running evaluations at any given time, and at this point, about 200 total evaluations. So we have a pretty big team, and the Dime Analytics team doesn't do any of that. We have research work jobs, ourselves, but we don't primarily work on these things ourselves. Instead, what we do is we say, okay, we have a lot of researchers and research assistants in one place, and therefore we want to use that scope to test new methods of doing things, figuring out what actually works for researchers, research assistants, and their teams, improve the quality of research coming out of here, and create trainings and software tools and resources that basically make those capabilities available to everybody. So our goal is a bit different, and our methods are a bit different than some of the other groups you've heard from this morning. We're really interested in getting involved earlier with the research teams, more intensively, and kind of having a more collaborative approach throughout the entire research cycle. So we'll show you what that looks like here. I guess it's animated. Our project is definitely, we think of it as a cycle because we are here all the time. So we work with RAs, we take questions from RAs, someone says, this isn't working, how do I do this? And we say, oh, wait a minute, that's a great thing that you bring up. Someone else had the same problem, and someone else had the same problem, and someone else had the same problem. How can we make that better either in training or in tools that are available? So we say, okay, we're going to revise the guidance for this process. And if there's something missing in there that we say, okay, such a tool could make your work enormously easier, either we find it and we learn it or we invent it. Then we bring those things all back to the bigger group through our regular annual trainings and training materials. And then we start again because something is always broken. We've definitely found that working intensively with research assistants is pretty much our most accessible group. They're the people who are like, wait a minute, I actually have to do this, and I need to do this right. Whereas, project managers, PIs, and so on don't necessarily have the most, in-depth work with the data and code itself. So that's our main point of contact for this improvement, but we always get feedback, of course, from PIs about what they want their team to be doing and make sure that they also know what their team should be doing so that they can manage them effectively. One program that we have instituted for the last couple of years is code review for every paper that's gone through the working paper series out of Dime. We have a code review checklist that emphasizes computational reproducibility. This happens obviously at the long end of the project, well after the data is collected, well after a lot of the original people are often gone. And we try to keep it pretty simple so that it's not adversarial, so that it's not scary, so that it doesn't send people running for the hills. And like I said, we've successfully done this for every paper that's gone through the working paper series at Dime. We also support that with peer review. Monthly isn't quite the right word for when these occur, but they happen regularly throughout the year where RAs can look at each other's code. One thing we want them to do is be able to help each other in real time when they're stuck. Another thing we want them to do is learn from each other's code in real time. So part of our goal here is to make sure that on this whole team, people are coding the same way so that mistakes are avoided and people can tell what code is supposed to be doing. We do this, we spread these ideas through an intensive onboarding and an occasional continuing education series. We have lessons for all RAs in coding procedures, less so in like general research stuff, and that's something that I'd like to develop going forward. But we have a lot of work on code and technology tools for doing these things right, and again, doing these things in a standardized way. How do we teach people to do this? We have a book that we hand people when they walk in the door. It's not a thick book, so again, it's not meant to be scary or intimidating or like, finger wavy at people, but it is supposed to be a guide to what you're doing. We've just put this out. We're doing internal revisions right now. The draft is available online, and we're going to hopefully release this early in the next year, but you know how writing these things is. But it's meant to be a narrative walkthrough to these tasks, what's expected, and to give our RAs a sense of what questions to ask. Now, it's not very good at answering the questions because it's a very short book. we have a much more detailed and much more intensive wiki site that we point people to. This has not only articles written in our own words and increasingly their own words, and increasingly other people's own words about how to actually do the things that are meant to be done, but also, of course, links to external resources, a kind of, wiki structure, like a network of related topics, examples, and so on and so forth, on how to do the tasks to make their research high quality, interpretable, and reproducible. So trying to avoid the problem, which was brought up earlier, of, yeah, the code runs, but is it any good? We're trying to make sure that our team here can actually look at each other's code and say, okay, I see what you did there, and that's great. Or that's completely the wrong way to do this thing. You'd better check that before it goes to code review. Again, one of the things that we do highlight in both of these is the tools that we've built. These are just little boring code snippets, so there's not, great, exciting images here. But we've written a couple of code packages and resources to help with this process. So IE FieldKit and IE Toolkit are code packages that we've written that are available for Stata publicly and for development on GitHub. So they're open source stuff with an active development trail. These are tools for basically every process from data collection to data analysis in a typical impact evaluation. So everything from it can actually scan some types of surveys and make sure that they're programmed well, resolve duplicates as things are coming in from the field, combine data sets across multiple rounds across multiple years, and then move into making sure your folder structures are correct, which is a completely automated command, making sure that you've done certain regressions the right way, even automating table outputs into LaTeX if that's what you need to do in IE Toolkit. We also have a Stata visual library, which has a number of examples of graphs in Stata that have been created by our teams, along with the code, so that it's very easy for research assistants to go on the site, oh yeah, I want to make that graph, and get the code to run that. These are all, again, things that are publicly available on the internet. If you Google any of them, they'll come right up. They're not all as beautiful and fleshed out as we'd like them to be, but they're open source, so you can help do that. The last part that we do on a regular basis is we host the Managed Successful Impact Evaluations training. This is started as kind of a training program, an onboarding program for new field coordinators and sometimes RAs, but is expanded to be externally available. This is done every June, and we open signups for it typically 6 months before, I would say, so you can keep an eye out for that. And I have about 180 people every year here and in person and online to basically kick people off learning these resources in this program. So, to kind of summarize, again, our work is that we work really closely with our team, and that's kind of our main job. And we realize that other people and other groups don't have the same number of researchers and research assistants sitting in one place. So we, as part of our mission at the World Bank, increasing global knowledge and global knowledge capacity, make sure that these resources that we develop for our teams are also available to everyone. Ideally, we'd have everyone code exactly the same way that we do, so we can read your code and vice versa. But we try to make it clear in terms of expectations and the support available to our teams from the very first day. And really focus on building those skills for the long term, because RAs will work on many projects over the course of their time here with us, and reusability of their code so they become more and more efficient and productive in a way that's predictable and standardized, and ultimately reproducible and high quality. So that's our work program. I'm going to wrap it